Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Whiting, and I will be walking you through the fourth feature of DataDrop. If you haven't been following along, DataDrop is an application that takes different data formats and can export them into other data formats. So, in some of my past videos, I've shown you that I can take data from a database select query from an Excel file, XML, JSON, and export it into JSON or XML or Excel, SQL insert file, or straight into a database. Which personally, side note, I think this one is the coolest thing, but I digress. The fourth feature I'm going to walk you through is API. So this feature is going to hit an API endpoint, REST endpoint, and get the data from that, and then export it into whatever kind of data you want. So um, this one is not going to, like the others, also transform into an API post. And what I mean is, so for example, with the database feature, we can hit a database with a select query and then parse through the return data to get the column names and the values inside of it. And then we can also take in any of these other things and export them straight into a database. But for the API, the only thing we're going to do is get the data. We're not going to post to an API. And the reason for that is because it gets a little bit more complicated with REST APIs. And because you have to worry about stuff like authentication and building objects, or is this a get or a post? Um, if this were if we were to build that out, this would obviously have to like build a JSON object to hit a post API endpoint with. But to actually like really make that useful, you would really just end up rebuilding something like Postman. So we're just not going to do that part. It's too involved, and the fifth feature is also due this weekend, so we're just going to skip that part. So without further ado, let me go ahead and demonstrate this feature. So what I mean when I say hit a REST API, we're going to hit a get API, and it's going to return a JSON object of data. And for an example, I'm using one of the APIs that I developed for Engineering 1 for the midterm when we made that movie website. I don't know if you guys were in that class. We had to make like a movie website, and this is one of the APIs I came up with. It gets a list of features. So here you see this API. When you hit it, you get this data back. So you get a JSON array called records that has an ID, a name, and a picture path. That was a physical path to a picture. I will get into that, but these are 9 different JSON objects that all have the same attribute: ID, name, and picture path. That's the important part. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. So DataDrop fires up. We're going to call our source data format from an API. And I have this URL text box populating automatically. This is just for testing purposes that it populates automatically with this URL. It's automatically populating for testing purposes because I didn't want to keep pasting this URL in. So we're going to hit that. We're going to show available attributes from that API. And here we have ID, name, and picture path. Remember, we had ID, name, and picture path. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the ID, the name, and the picture path, and we're going to export that into, for example, we're going to do Excel. Okay, and we're going to call that demo API. and generate file. Let's go ahead and close this boy. Oops, it's over here. So that generated the demo API Excel file, and you can see that it put all those values into Excel. You got the ID, the name, and the picture path as columns, and then here's the IDs. They're not in an order. They're in the order they came in the GET request. All the name values and all the picture paths. Okay, so that's pretty much what DataDrop does. It takes data from one source and parses it into another, basically. So I'll show you one more example. So let's hit API again. Let's use that same one. And this time I'm going to generate a SQL insert file. Okay, so when you're doing inserts, you don't generally insert the ID. So this time we're just going to keep the name and the picture path. And if you saw the last video about, I guess 2 videos ago, about the SQL file generation, the thing you name the file is also going to have to be the name of the table you are posting to, so, or whatever. So we're going to call this genre. It's going to create a genre SQL file with the prefixed with the date. And let's go take a look at it. Alright, I don't want to open data grip, so let's just open, there we go. Alright, so from that data, we told it to ignore the ID, so there's no ID in here. It says insert into genre, which was the name we gave it in the GUI. And then here are all the different values. So that was feature number 4 for DataDrop, taking data from an API and parsing it into whatever other kind of data you want. Excel, SQL insert, XML, JSON, whatever. So thank you for watching, and let me or my team know if you have any questions. Bye.